Welcome to Uncaged. Today we're speaking with Sean Patton. Sean has a variety of operations that are all really connected to a central theme and quite an important movement that's been shaping business over the last decade. But he's very focused on the topic of leadership. He's an executive coach and a leadership consultant. He drives an organization. He's the president of Stronger Leaders, Stronger Profits. They've built a platform that allows leadership training across organizations. They've got exciting leadership events on the way. Anyway, we'll get very much into the topic of better leadership and how to do that and how to evolve yourself. But before we get there, Sean, tell us a little bit about you and your career.
Yeah, so we'll go the short route here, but I'm from a small town in Kansas, raised by a single mom, Lawrence, Kansas, outside Kansas City. And then 3 weeks out of high school, I went up to New York to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. I spent 4 years at a service academy there. Then I spent the next 10 years as an active duty officer in the Army. So that's, my formative years from 18 to 32 was sort of the most intense leadership education training experiences on the planet, honestly. Yeah. So I was an infantry officer for 5 years, rifle platoon leader, scout and sniper platoon leader. Then I spent the next 5 years after getting my Green Beret as a special forces commander, commanded 2 different special forces teams, including an underwater infiltration team, and got out in 2015. And, everyone has things about their job they love and the things they put up with, right? For the same military is no different. And for me, it was always about leadership and problem solving. I was never really the gun guy or the gear guy or whatever else. That's what intrigued me. And that has been my passion my whole life. So I knew that I wanted to take some of these lessons that I had learned that 99.9% of the population didn't have a chance to learn or put themselves through. And how can I bring that and add value to organizations? Because I believe that, leadership is the most powerful force on the planet. And it's sort of any social, government, politics, personal, mental health. I think leadership is kind of the answer to all of those things. But I didn't want to be the military officer gets out and says, all right, business leaders, let me tell you about real leadership, when hadn't spent a day in business in my life. There's not a lot of marketing classes or biz dev classes at the military academy. So I set out on a 2-pronged path. 1, get a formal education in business. I got my MBA from UNC Chapel Hill. And then 2, thought, well, what's the quickest way to, learn as much as I can, test my theories, make as many mistakes as possible, start my own company, right? So I started my own company. I thought if I get my one company self-sustainably profitable from scratch, seems like I'll have a chance to test all these models. And I started off first company, and some things went well, some things didn't. Ended up having to close it, went through a bankruptcy, kind of lost everything, started over, pivoted, started the next company. And that is self-sustainably profitable. And we have a CEO and GMs and multiple locations, and kind of runs itself now. So I've pivoted to Stronger Profits after sort of running those lessons in the business world and testing theories over 6 or 7 years. And that's where I'm at now, and how Stronger Profits kind of came to be.
That's really an amazing story. Certainly, obviously, thank you for your service. The incredible learning experiences that you can get from being part of the military, being put in awkward, difficult situations where the best strategy needs to be actually completely rethought, I think is probably one of the most valuable skills you can pick up. And certainly when you start businesses, some things go well, some things don't go well. But now you have Stronger Leaders, Stronger Profits. Tell me more about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so it's just like any company, right? It's been really interesting to, over the last 4 or 5 years, really figure out who we are and where we can best accomplish our overall goal. I am a huge proponent of being obsessed with the problem and not the solution, right? Not one way of doing things, but whatever it takes to solve the problem you're trying to solve. And so as we pivoted around, and we've really landed in the last year in a really powerful place, which is we've developed the Stronger Leaders Academy, which I think is going to kind of revolutionize. I know it's going to revolutionize the business landscape, especially for fast-growing mid-sized companies, because it's a software-based, done-for-you leadership development program. And I have seen with it's the product of me working with company after company after company,
Mhm.
where they have a 4-person, 5-person HR staff for 800 people. And, they've from 200 people to 600 people over a short period of time. And they've got 26-year-old VPs who are trying to figure out how to do their job. And now you have remote work and hybrid work and the expectations of the leaders. And no one in the space has really solved that problem of how do we create an enduring systemic leadership culture inside of a company. And so as I started to consult and do workshops, it was a great injection of ideas, right? You go in, everyone's fired up. Here's how we're going to do. Over the course of the next 5 or 6 years, how many of those things have stuck? How many things actually change the full culture? And so what I see in the leadership development space is it's whack-a-mole out here. It's the Wild West. If they're going to bring me in for a workshop, I'm going to work with a coach or coach one of their executives for a little bit. And then the next year they're going to do Brene Brown, and they're going to send people to John Maxwell Academy, and someone's going to read Extreme Ownership, and then they're all going to do Jocko stuff, right? It's every year it's something different. So every leader now has learned a different style.
Yeah.
And despite, yes, every leader doesn't have to be a robot, right? You have to be an individual, and you have to lead people different. But no, if you have a whole organization like that, you have no culture.
Mm.
A culture means everyone is viewing things the same way. Everyone's doing things the same way, right? If I go from one division to another, my expectations from that manager shouldn't be different. It should be the same. I should be counseled the same way. I should be communicated to. The feedback should be the same. I should be trained the same way. I should be developed in the same protocol, right? Because then you have a leadership culture. And that's what great companies do, all the way back to, Good to Great, the Jim Collins book.
Yeah.
What it come down to, of all the things you look at about, 100 years of companies, we call them level 5 leaders. It's leadership. Leadership is the difference maker between a good company and a great company. And we're proud to be sort of the first in the space to be delivering that in a way that works with remote teams, hybrid teams, and in-person teams, and is really owned by the company. And we just assist their leaders and leadership development people to implement it the way they see fit and be advisors and create a systemic leadership culture that creates fulfillment and profitability with inside companies.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something to me that really resonated. It was the first time I've actually heard it. You said Gen Z is looking for companies to train them to be leaders. You said that to me, and I thought, what a great thought. I mean, I don't think that companies think about that right now. I think right now they focus on Gen Z attributes like, oh, well, they want flexibility and yada, 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 but they don't really think about the fact that at the end of the day, these are young people, and they want to learn, and they want to succeed, and they want to move forward, and they want to understand. And that's a really, really valuable skill.
So I have these 4 leadership truths, which really are values that after all of our experience, all of our research, we've come down and say, look, this is just the right way to do things. These are the fundamental principles that a company that wants to be successful should implement in their leadership space. And if you don't agree with these values or these truths, that's fine. We're not going to work with you. Like, you're not a good fit, right? And one of those is that development and leader development has to be inherent in your daily operations. Another one is that development has to be a core competency. A reason that your business exists, that your organizations exist, is to develop the people in the organization to be better human beings and better leaders and better at their careers. Because who else is going to do it, right? Yeah. And we see this over and over again. I mean, there's all the lists you can look at for that are leading indicators of a failing culture. Right? People wonder about what's the ROI? How do I know if it's working? Well, are the majority of your leadership hires outside the company? That means you're not developing leaders, right? It means you're, and when I tell companies when they do that is, you can find some studs, right? You can find some good leaders here and there. But what you're really telling me is that my competition can develop better leaders than I can. Well, that's what I'm trusting, right? That's a scary thought. Wait, my organization is so bad at developing people that I have to have my competitors train my leaders? That seems a little crazy to me, right? Yeah. And it's also leads to more employee, higher turnover, less employee engagement. We hear all about quiet quitting and all that stuff with how do you keep accountability for remote teams, and it really comes down to fulfillment and profitability. To me, are intrinsically linked. Yeah. And if you treat people like a widget, if you treat them like a gear in a machine, and this is a transactional relationship where you do stuff for me and I give you money and that's the end of it. As soon as someone decides to give them $5 more an hour or $10,000 more a month to do the same thing, they're gone. And why wouldn't they be? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the conditions you're setting. But if you provide, and they know that, man, I have every one-on-one with my manager, I learned something. I am a better communicator with my partner, with my kids, because of what I'm learning at work. I'm maturing in my mindset. My time management is better. My prioritization, my skills, my goal setting, my financial management, my confidence are getting better because of the organization I'm a part of. That is so exceedingly rare. And every study shows you that person is working harder. They are more engaged. They're going to give you way more value. They're going to stay with you longer. And they're not going to leave over $5,000 because it's not worth it to them. So if you take your altruistic hat off, right, for a minute and look at the P&L, that means you're getting more value, harder work for less money out of that individual, which leads to higher profitability, right? So we can't ignore the long-term for the short-term gain. We can't run our company based on how we do every quarter, every month. That will work in the short term, but it will ruin your company in the long term if you don't invest in your people and think strategically.
I love it. And Sean, you mentioned that you're working on a big event, a leadership event. Tell me more about that. It sounded really cool.
Yeah, so this all started with my business coach who had done some live events and wasn't doing another one. And all the people that work with him were upset, myself included. I'm like, no, we want to do another event. We loved it. He's like, I'm just not excited about it. It's not new. It's not fresh. And it doesn't hit the mark. So until I'm inspired, I'm not going to do another one. So I said, well, I got an idea. Let me pitch you on this. So, and what it is what we're calling the Leadership Revolution Festival. And this is a conscious leadership conference for business leaders, nonprofit leaders, and just people who want to be better self-leaders and want to bring conscious leadership and about leading people and developing people as a way of life, as a mindset inside their organization and inside their lives. And then it's pretty cool because we're in Nashville here, right? I am. So we're combining it with a music festival feel. And because let's be honest, like most executive leadership conferences are exceedingly boring, right? It gets exceedingly boring. True. And also, it's not the environment to grow because you're going in with your business cards and you're suited up and you've got your pitch ready. Who do I need to meet and what contacts would you need? And you're selling yourself the whole time. That's why we're exhausted by day 2. And it's like, I don't even want to talk to anyone because I don't want to tell my story for the 60th time. They try to sell them on my value. That's a buttoned up environment. That's not an environment for growth. So if you get people around this like art and music festival and sort of challenge them and you put people in situations and small groups around concepts and ideas and in an environment that you can take the shield off, take your armor off and come in and everyone is there because they just want to get better and learn in that environment, I think huge growth can be had by their participants. So I'm really excited. That'll be April 5th and 6th here in Nashville called the Leadership Revolution Festival. We're revising some of the content, but by the end of this month, probably by the time this comes out, the website will be fully up. We've got great panels and speakers, and I'm really excited for that event. It's going to be a cool one in April.
I love it. And, Sean, I look at the leadership space and anyone who has worked in business for the last 20 years realizes that the coaching around leadership has dramatically shifted, accelerated, broadened in a wide variety of ways. Most notably, I truly felt that the pandemic offered this very interesting leadership training moment where a lot of companies started offering their executives coaches. There were even organizations rolling out to offer executive coaching. Where are we today in terms of the broader kind of, I guess, leadership marketplace?
Great question. Coaching is here to stay because coaching works.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a place for coaching in internal coaches inside an organization, depending on size, as well as bringing external coaches. Especially for senior leaders, I think external coaches are very important because if you have senior leaders inside of an organization, I work with a lot of CEOs, right? No one in the organization is giving them an unfiltered view of themselves because they all work for them, right? And so because I'm outside the organization, I'm not in the industry or any other executive coach, I feel like that's where the power comes in because you have that. And then also the professionalism behind executive coaches training with organizations like the International Coaching Federation certification has sort of professionalized it a bit. What I will say is that, your coaching and individual coaches should not be a substitute to neglect development of your people inside your organization. Because ideally, and I think this is why, things like the Strong Leaders Academy are so powerful, is because we can't substitute out and say, well, I'm going to hire 30 different coaches with different perspectives to train my top 30 leaders in different ways to think and be. How's that going to play out inside the company, right? So I would say senior people, and there's certain instances where your coaching is fantastic and senior leaders absolutely need coaches. And in a way, almost everyone sort of needs a coach of some kind or a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what it really shows you is that there's this need, and there's a need for development in a structured way inside of organizations. And there's not in most organizations, a single person or a group of people that are really qualified to create that cultural change, right? That really understand the complexities of this environment, especially as you mentioned with the pandemic. We could get by in a fully in-person, which is why I kind of laugh with all the organizations fighting for this, like, everyone's got to come back to the office. And I really read an article yesterday where then they would ask them, like, why? And they're like, I don't know, not enough data. It just seems like we need to be in the office. Like, that's literally what CEOs of Fortune 100 companies are saying. And what they're really saying is, we don't have a structured program or a culture. And so I need everyone here so I can talk to you ad hoc, right? Like, we're going to do development, fly by the seat of our pants, because I need you here, because when something strikes, I need to come make a change, instead of actually being able to structure a program that's repeatable, that has consistency over time. And I think that that's where we're heading, especially because there are people who need to collaborate and work together, engineers and, service-based stuff that is going to have to be in person or a hybrid environment.
Yeah.
But we're seeing very clearly that the marketplace and people are saying, the marketplace saying, I don't want to drive an hour and a half into work, and I don't need to, because somebody else can let me do my job, either hybrid or remote. And so it's going to be very few organizations that are going to be able to pull everyone back in and just be ad hoc about their leadership development, their culture development. And when you spread teams out like that, what it takes is a structured, intentional, and well planned out approach. It's like, if you get everyone together for a meeting and everyone knows each other, you just say, let's get together. You can work through some stuff. Yeah. But how much different is it to run, like we're talking now, a virtual meeting with 20 people who all talk over each other, who have different perspectives and are trying to chime in. And if you come in with no plan to that meeting, it's going to be a nightmare.
It's a fascinating thing. I think about it a lot because, like any executive, we obviously made shifts during the pandemic in how we managed, office time, et cetera. And I do often hear from the veterans of the company, wouldn't it be great to spend more time together? It's true. I think there's a human element that people want to be human. They want to have that useless time in a way. It's not necessarily the most productive time, but they do want that soft learning to happen in some form or fashion. However, it has certainly not been proven out by data that being in an office is the right way to get that, right? And so I think for me, like when I hear about you setting up events and then letting people kind of figure out the right structure for their organization, that's got to be a better way to go. It doesn't make sense, especially with Gen Z, to be like, you need to be in the office from, it's like, really? Good luck. I mean, the data is showing that young people, women, a lot of people that are, upper middle management are basically like voting by leaving. It's, the economy has a ton of jobs. So I don't know if that's going to be a smart move, but.
And the companies that do that, right? Like, what's the cost there, right? Because there's this data, they say, well, people are 90% less productive. Like, first of all, that's probably a structural organization, because management, let's be honest, management and metrics these days for most companies is not hard, right? Yeah. Like, my wife is a senior sales manager. Like, she has, software that every rep she has will say what percentage they talked, the other person talked, how many filler words did they use, what questions did they ask, how many calls, how many click, like, we can make metrics, like we know how people are productive. I think that the productivity stance is more about managers not trusting their people and not setting up the proper communication channels so that they have the right metrics to know what's happening. And let's say there is a 10% dip, because there are distractions, right? There's people, like you said, there's whether it's men or women or whoever, that have little kids at home and need to be in sick and are struggling with childcare. It's like, so all those things that happen, But guess what they're not doing is they're not driving an hour, one way into work. They're not taking up building space time, right? All these other things.
I hate to say it, I'm positive that the push from this is really very, very wealthy bankers that are holding on to a lot of commercial real estate. And they're like, oh my God, if we don't get these offices filled, we're going to have a lot of problems. That's what I think this is really about.
I don't think you're that far off. And you look at Goldman Sachs and some of the bigger financial institutions of some of the ones leading this. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, you need to be in person to do data analysis. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that makes it just, I'm not saying there's certain groups so I think that I'm really big on digging, right? Get to the foundation. And actually on my podcast, Leadership After Hours, I had a neuroscience and performance expert who was actually one of my professors in my executive coaching program. And she had a great quote that said, if you haven't hit paradox, you haven't gone far enough. And so I think that we have to keep digging deeper and not stay surface level. And to me, when it comes to these sort of questions, and this comes from my time in the military and in the business world now, every mission, right? Every why that a company has, every North Star, mission statement, whatever, for whatever you're trying to do, there is an optimal task organization and an optimal culture.
Right.
So your goal as a leader is to figure out, well, what is that based on what we're trying to do? And if you're a service-based, customer rep type of company, maybe, or whatever, like that may be in person, maybe, right. I don't know. It may be completely remote, but your job is to constantly tweak and realize that perfection is the goal, not a state you can ever achieve. It's a constant process of optimizing your organization and your culture. And if you get your task org right, your task organization correct, and you get your culture right, you're gonna have the highest chance of success of accomplishing whatever you're setting out to do, whatever that mission is.
Yeah. And, Sean, I always find it interesting. Clearly, you had the military experience, business school experience, business setup experience, but along the way, clearly you've been a leader and you've been gravitating towards that leadership role. What is it about this that drives this passion for kind of seeking this out?
We'll go deep but fast here for a second. I really have this conversation to begin. So when I was coming of age, 15, 16, 17, I started reading the news and analyzing what I was seeing and kind of coming out of that protected space that you grew up in the Midwest. And I started realizing how lucky I was. Right? I didn't grow up with money. I grew up poor with a single mom until she remarried when I was in junior high. But, I particularly read a story about violence in the Middle East. Go figure, right? And there was a bomb explosion at a bus stop in Israel. And I remember thinking, man, I've read the bus my whole life. I've never once thought, man, I wonder if there's a bomb at this bus stop. Why is that? Why don't I have to worry about that and other kids do? And that drove my decision to serve and join the military, because one of the reasons is people fought to create the society we have. But the other one was, man, a bigger question about life and purpose and what is this all about? And why am I in this position and feeling so lucky? And I started experiencing this gratitude and I am still on that hunt, let's say, right? And I don't know if I'll ever find it. I think that one of my biggest steps in my mindset in the last few years has been the acceptance of potentially not knowing. But one thing I did make a decision of then when I was 16, 17 is like, I don't know what that answer is, but I know I'm going to make my life matter because I know this is a special experience. I know this is a special experience, this consciousness, the being and born at this place, in this country, at this time, like how amazing I could do. This is incredible. And I don't know why, but I know I'm going to make it matter. And as I looked out, what I've realized is leadership is the answer. Leadership starts with self-leadership. And that's why my book called The Warrior's Mindset, I came up with the 6 keys of greatness. That was because I did executive coaching and I was talking with these senior executives. And when we talked about management and metrics, they're on it. But when I talked about leadership, like leading other human beings to be better human beings, I got some blank stares from pretty senior people in some pretty big companies. And what I started realizing was, oh, you haven't learned how to lead yourself. And if you can't lead yourself, or you're not on the path of self-leadership and self-improvement, then how can you possibly lead other people? So leadership, this mantle of leadership, of self-leadership, is really about becoming your best self. It's really about gratitude for life we have. And it's really about how can I maximize my own experience of life? And how can I maximize my impact on the world? And for me, I saw leadership in myself and getting better and then spreading that as being the answer, because I really believe that leadership is the most powerful force on the planet. I believe leadership is the greatest competitive advantage in the marketplace. And I believe that it is really the answer to all of our problems, again, whether that's politics, governance, business, or self or existential angst. I mean, we're at a mental health crisis, depression, anxiety. That is self-leadership, and that is them lacking leaders, showing them how to be a better human. And
Right.
so this isn't just about the bottom line, although we need great leaders to be in great profitable companies to put resources into the right things to drive our culture forward. And so that's the arc I'm on, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, and that's my North Star. It's about fulfillment in my own life. It's about creating more fulfillment through conscious leadership in our culture, and it's about doing a net benefit effect on the world and people around me as much as I can in as many days as I'm given.
Yeah, Sean, it's inspiring to listen to you talk about leadership and see how you see it fitting in as a cornerstone of really all thinking and all movement forward. Sean, if someone wanted to learn more about what you and the team at Stronger Leaders, Stronger Profits are doing, where's the best place to reach you?
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me sort of individually there. If you're a company interested in coaching or Stronger Leaders Academy, then strongerleaders, and if you're interested in having me come speak, I do a lot of keynote speaking and conferences. That's SeanPattonSpeaks.com. And if you just want to take in some knowledge or hear some thoughts, my podcast is called Leadership After Hours. You can find on Spotify, Apple, or the website. And I have some really great conversations with thought leaders and operational leaders about where we're headed in leadership as a whole.
Excellent. Well, Sean, as I said, inspiring conversation. We've been speaking to Sean Patton. He is the president of Stronger Leaders, Stronger Profits. We've been talking about all the other organizations that link in there, but the cornerstone, the connection is the topic of leadership and how leadership weaves its way through all of these areas. And if you get it right, things will move forward. Sean, thank you so much. And we look forward to having you back on the Uncaged show.
Thanks, Ben. This is great.
Cheers.